Hi, it's Bree, and I'm here to do my February wrap up. Who figured that it was already the end of February? I barely realized it myself. So I read about 18 books over the course of February, which is ridiculous. A couple of them were more short stories. I read Joe Hill's Twittering at the Circus of the Dead, which, if you've read it, you know it is just a short story, really. But anyway, I'll just do some of the highlights because, like I said, there was a lot. One of the series that I read was actually Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I did a review of it on about a week or two ago. So I'll just link that below instead of spending the time here. It's fabulous. If you haven't read it, read it. I also read Eleanor and Park and Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. If you haven't read them, they're absolutely fantastic contemporary reads. More new adult than young adult, I would say. Eleanor and Park takes place in the 80s and follows kind of a teen romance, but with a more serious set of teens than I think contemporary teen fiction normally follows. And then Attachments is about this guy in his 20s who's working in this office, and he kind of finds himself falling in love with this girl he's never met. And it's a great read, absolutely lovely, both of them. After that, I read Mayhem by Sarah Pinborough, and I was really excited to get this book. It follows a doctor during the Whitechapel murders, so Jack the Ripper, and it follows a contemporaneous, serial killer. So while they're hunting for Jack the Ripper, they're also hunting for this guy who's kind of chopping women up into pieces. And kind of, it gets a little bit with a supernatural bent. I also read The Professor by Charlotte Bronte, which is about a man who goes to teach English at I want to say, at a Belgium school. And he finds over time that it's kind of a different place than he thought it would be. And he finds himself falling in love with one of the students in his course. It's really interesting, not where you think it's going to go. And really interesting, I think Bronte does a really good job of kind of capturing the perspective and really kind of the male voice, which surprised me. A decent read, not my favorite. It's a little slow, like all, Bronte's works, but definitely kind of worth taking the time. I read my first Orson Scott Card book this month. I read Worms, which is an 87 print, I want to say. I didn't want to start out with something kind of typical like Ender's Game, because I really wanted to have a sense of who Scott Card is when he writes before I jumped on into something that's really hyped up, and I didn't want to be disappointed when I read that. I wanted to decide if I liked him based on his writing style and what he writes about. So I read Worms. It's about a young girl, Patience, and she kind of is being called towards this creature. And she finds out that there's this big prophecy about her. There's really an entire religion that's kind of advocating for her to take over the country she's a part of. It's really interesting. I will say I was a little bit less than thrilled with some of the things that Card did. Some of the parallels he makes with the Virgin Mary throughout, and some of the philosophical rants, so to say, I found a little bit tedious and a little bit poorly integrated. But overall, not a bad read at all. I'm excited. I'm going to try reading something else because I think Worms is a very short book, and I think maybe in one of the books or perhaps series of books that he spends a lot more time in, I would find myself enjoying it more. The other thing that I read is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. It's a book about this guy who goes to work at, obviously, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, and he finds out that there's a lot more to it, and they kind of go on this grand search for a way to decode this great mystery. And it involves some interesting stuff like data visualization theory and kind of decoding and computer culture, I guess you could call it. I would say those parts aren't my favorite. My favorite parts are the parts that take place in the bookstore itself. But it has a lot to offer. And then I was also sent, from New Vessel Press, I was sent The Good Life Elsewhere by Vladimir Lorchenkov. It's a translation of a Moldovan story about this town, and they're kind of miserable and very impoverished, and it's about how they all want to kind of escape to Italy, and how Italy has become this kind of fairy tale land that they all want to go to. It almost becomes kind of like a mythological kind of land of milk and honey. It's a really good read. Definitely sad at parts. There are parts that are pretty funny. It does kind of say on the back that it's supposed to be like, I don't know, what's it say? Oh, an uproarious tale, which I wouldn't necessarily say that. It feels very much like some of the dark comedy that I've read. Regardless, a very good read, worth the time. It's not released yet. I have a proof copy, but it will be out, well, it says publication date, February 18, 2014. So maybe it's out already. If you can get your hands on a copy, I'd suggest it. It's a really great look, I think, into Soviet and post-Soviet life, but without being kind of the traditional approach to that. I also read on my e-reader Neil Gaiman's Ocean at the End of the Lane, which was fantastic. A quick read, definitely worth it. It was the first Gaiman that I've ever read, which is surprising, because I think he's kind of an awesome human being. But I really enjoyed it. I also read The Golem and the Jinni by Helen Recker. I'm probably saying that wrong. Which has some fantastic character building and kind of a very interesting integration of fantasy with the modern world. 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely check it out. And then I am going on to The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. As you can see, I have it in the mass market paperback edition, which I have a soft spot for mass market paperbacks. I actually don't know too much about. I'm in about 70 pages in. And it's about, so far, this guy who's kind of telling his story, and he's this great adventurer. And there's this kind of demon spider infestation in the town that he's kind of gone into hiding in. So we'll see where it goes. I'm very excited. I've heard such great things about Rothfuss. Anyway, I'm going to do another video, which will be my March TBR, and let you know what's on my list to read then. Bye!